this is our Gita from the beginning room. Basically, we started this just to get a broad overall understanding, verse by verse, of the Bhagavad Gita, and we are doing verses 10 to 12 of chapter 2. And this is a weekly room we are doing apart from our daily rooms, which is the Mahamrityunjay Jap room, which is happening at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day, Indian Standard Time. So I'll ask Ganpati to do the next verse. It's quite symbolic because first of all, he's referencing to a conversation happening between two friends. So if we focus our attention towards the reference which is used over here, Bharata. So Bharata is a reference to the great Maharaj Bharat, from whose lineage all of these people belong to, and also after whom the name of our great nation was also kept, Bharat, because he was one of the Maharajas who set an example by living the concepts of dharma and justice. And basically he belonged to a time frame where it was customary or agreed upon that any son born to the king, the eldest one, should by default get the throne. And he was probably the first one. You could say he was a rebel in many ways, who actually went against this, and in fact he found none of his sons actually capable of taking up the throne and really following on the concepts of dharma, and he just went and just got a person from outside his lineage to rule the kingdom. So that was quite an example which he set for dharma and justice. And over here, by referring to Maharaja Bharat, it's Sanjay is basically he is trying to bring the attention back to Dhritarashtra as to, you belong to this lineage of Bharata, Maharaj Bharat. So by trying to invoke his name, he is trying to also invoke the feelings of dharma and justice, and sort of let go of this strong and extreme affection and attachment to his son Duryodhana, who is actually blinding Dhritarashtra as well from his duty of doing the right thing. He is trying to put Duryodhana on the king's throne, whereas he is not at all capable of that. And that's a thing which Dhritarashtra is unable to see. So he is not just only blind by birth, but he's also being blinded by his own extreme affection, his love for his son, his desires, his greed. Everything is blinding his intuition and his conscience as well. So in this way, he is reminding him in a very different manner and very subtly of the duties and responsibilities which come with belonging to such a lineage. And that is very important, because a Maharaja is basically the karta of the entire nation, of the entire people who are under him. So if he is not going to adhere by dharma and justice, then people have nowhere else to go. And the problem over here is, it's not like how we have the governments today. It's a king, so it's difficult to overthrow a king within a short span of time unless he dies, or somebody overthrows him, or he gets defeated in a war. So these are very different times, and so it is very important that the existing king be put into the path of righteousness and dharma, and basically operate in a justified manner, keeping his own personal interest aside. Because if he's going to bring his personal interest into the welfare of the greater good, it's always going to be a skewed balance, and there's going to be a high chance that it's not going to get balanced properly. And this is where we see the wisdom of Sanjay trying to really steer the chariot of Dhritarashtra's mind by simply referencing him as Bharata, because at least invoking that name might just change something inside him, shift some emotions inside him and some principles inside him, and really make him see the truth. And the other point we should really focus on is when he references to Rishikesh, which is another name for Sri Krishna, and the word is smiling. So basically, the talk is going on between these two intimate friends, who are Rishikesha and Gudakesha. And as friends, both of them are practically on the same level. But look at the beauty of this. One of them really voluntarily becomes a student of the other. And now Krishna is smiling because a friend has chosen to become a disciple and surrender unto him. So as Lord of all, he's always in this superior position as the master of everyone. But yet he accepts those who wish to be a friend, a son, a lover, or a devotee, or anybody who wants him in such a role. And so he is basically offering, you could say, a little bit of solace, because he's going to completely change things around from the next verse. So this is like just you could say a candy right before things are about to get pretty serious later on. So as a friend, he's offering this smile to him so that at least Arjuna should not feel absolutely offended by what Krishna is trying to make him understand. So at this point, anybody would like to offer some input or share some thoughts on this?
Manojji.
Did you want to say something, Manoj? You're not audible if you are saying something right now.
Am I now?
Right, yeah, now you're audible.
Oh, you said beautifully. You described beautifully. I'm waiting for the next shloka.
Okay, all right. Ganpati, we'll have the next flow.
असोष्ण्य वंशो स्तवम् प्रज्ञावान्ताश्च भाससे गता सुञ्च नानु शोचन्ति पंडिताः.
So here, Shri Bhagwan, the Supreme God, Shri Krishna, is basically now telling here, I'll just say the direct translation, you are grieving for those who are not worthy of your sorrow, yet speaking like a knowledgeable man of wisdom. Wise men do not grieve for the dead or for the living. So, like I was saying in the previous verse, that smiling part, it's just a very small, you could say a balm to Arjuna's wounds or Arjuna's wounded ego and mind, because he goes off on a very caustic and high note again in this verse. And there are two very important undertones over here in this verse. And the first one is basically the fool. Now, from the previous verse, you saw that Shri Krishna is smiling at Arjuna as a friend. But here Krishna immediately changes his gears, and in this verse, he's saying, you are talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is the body and what is the soul, they do not lament for any stage of the body, whether it is in the living state or in the dead condition. So in this manner, Shri Krishna is, you could say, indirectly scolding Arjuna for speaking like a foolish person. He is using a lot of arguments, he is using, you could say, tarka, as we had spoken earlier. He is using the concept of tarka, but tark is not really getting him anywhere, because when you use tark, you basically split one thought or argument or idea into two separate, more continuing parts, and then you keep on splitting it into further and further more parts. So you never get to the end, you just get more and more parts out of it. And that is why he is like completely, he has so many thoughts happening in his mind, because he started cutting them up with his intellect. But that is not getting him anywhere. And basically now he is sounding like a foolish person. And this is where Shri Krishna reminds him that you're trying to act knowledgeable using all these nice arguments and nice concepts about morality and other topics, but you're basically you're not able to see the larger picture, because you could say Arjuna, like all of us, he's representing all of us basically. So he is the eyes and ears for us. He's listening on our behalf. So he has a very, or you could say, we have a very myopic sight. We can see till only a further distance, but seeing is not equal to knowing. Just because you see something does not mean that you can know it. I mean, in that aspect, air is all around us. We know oxygen is needed for survival, but has anyone ever seen oxygen with their own eyes? And the answer is no. You cannot really see it with your physical eyes until and unless you add something to the eyes, maybe a microscope or maybe some form of scope which can really show you what oxygen looks like. Otherwise, just with your biological physical eye, the one which came with your birth, doesn't really help you in understanding this concept. And basically Krishna is trying to show this to Arjuna that see, you are having a myopic view, so you have to go beyond this view. You have to drop this tark logic and go into vitarka, which is beyond all these logical arguments and logical thought processes and logical interpretations. And that is where he is trying to show Arjuna that you cannot really debate this on human connection basis and morality, because he's not able to see this bigger picture of what the body is, what the matter is, and what the soul is. Because Shri Krishna is basically there to remove all these layers. So he's basically, in a way you could say, how in the kitchen we unpeel the onion. So he's actually peeling off the onions of Arjuna's mind and his ego, and literally taking it off piece by piece. He's breaking it down. He's completely breaking down the structure of the ego, which is set not just inside Arjuna, but it's inside all of us, right? We grow up with these layers and peels all around us, and we start thinking that we are probably the most outermost layer, or in other words, if I say the chilka, the outer skin of the onion, when actually it's much, much more deeper than that. And this is where he's trying to probe and take Arjuna on this inward journey and reach that innermost layer where he can really see beyond what this physical body is trying to encrust. And basically, this is where he refers to him, indirectly at least, as the fool who's trying to approach this thought with eyes of a logical person. Now, the second point over here, which is very important and which is basically the cause of Arjuna's problems, is the lamentation. So Krishna is pointing out that you are lamenting for someone who isn't even worthy of lamentation. And this is a very big statement to make. Even if we were to make this statement today without giving any context, it would result in a very violent response from the other side. Because Shri Krishna is referring to people of the highest stature of their times, like people like Bhishma Pitama, people like Guru Dronacharya, Kulguru Kripacharya. These are people who are revered and they are worshipped almost. And he is saying that you are lamenting for these people who aren't even worthy of lamentation. And this statement completely shocks Arjuna, and he's taken by surprise, and he's wondering why Shri Krishna is even saying such statements or such words, because he cannot understand how such human beings could be unworthy of lamentation. And he is even further puzzled by this statement. But he is unable to understand that the body is born and is destined to be vanquished, either today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, some day or the other. So therefore, the body is not as important as the soul, and that is the essence of what Krishna is trying to say over here. So one who knows this point or this aspect is actually learned, and for him, for such a person who knows this difference, that it's the soul and not the body which counts, that person will not find any cause for lamentation. And Sri Krishna is basically just pointing this out to Arjuna, because Arjuna is no foolish person. He is practically the most strongest, the most successful, and the most divinely endowed warrior of his time. And not just that, he's also a learned person. So you could say he's not really a foolish person per se, but it's just that this moment of the Dharamkshetra, Kurukshetra, is making him into a dilemmic state, and where he's really deciding that why should I kill these people. So basically he's saying that there's no cause for any lamentation regardless of the condition of the material body. And this basically, you could see this happening around you every day. If you've ever seen any form of a tree, any form of a plant, or even if we talk about the seasonal fruit right now, if you look at a mango tree, if you don't pluck the mango when it is ripe at the right moment, it will just fall to the ground and it will simply rot over there, and that's it. It will just get mixed with the earth. So basically, when you're not there to really witness this happening, it's always happening all the time. The fruit is coming, it's dropping, and it's going back to the earth, and it's coming back again from the tree. So it's just we who think that, oh, I didn't pluck it at the right time. But that's not the point. That process is ongoing. That's the point of existence. Existence goes about its work unrelenting. It does not stop for anybody. It does not wait for any lamentation. All of this keeps happening in a cyclical, circular basis. You could say that we are at least fortunate enough that we have a longer lifespan, slightly longer than the mango. Although, if you look at the cosmic scale, we are probably nothing. We are just, we won't even come in a dot as well. Such is our lifespan. Even just if you look at the span of the earth, we don't figure out much on the span, the lifetime of the earth. But yet, this concept of lamentation, it always perplexes us. It always makes us confused. It always clouds our decision process, and in many ways it's the cause of misery for us as well. So it's this attachment to this concept of lamentation that we need to stop and we need to keep grieving about it, which is causing us to stop doing our actions. But that's the whole point. The entire existence is action driven. Suppose if the tree stops to think and say that I will wait for probably 5 years and then give the fruit, what's going to happen to all the creatures, and in fact us as well, who depend on that fruit, right? Just consider the moment when you don't see the fruit on your shopping mall shelves or anywhere where you buy the fruits. It's a perplexing thing. Right in the middle of the season, if it stops coming, it's a huge problem. Everybody is affected. So that's the reason we have to look at. That's the aspect we need to address, that if such a thing is happening, we need to really figure out that why are we lamenting about it? Because lamentation is the biggest hurdle to the path of action. At this point, I welcome anybody who wishes to offer their thoughts. Any thoughts?
Good.
Yes.
You're so right about the lamentation. In verse 10, if we could look at the smile of Sri Krishna, it could be that Sri Krishna knows Arjun's problem. And the problem is that Arjuna yet till now does not know the difference between sadness and suffering. So sadness is a part of material nature, and what we as people try to do is try and remove it at every step. But if you look at it practically, it is not our enemy. The suffering about it is. So the wisdom that Sri Krishna is talking about, or the wisdom that he knows that Arjuna does not yet has, is that to welcome sadness, have sadness in life, but then be okay with it, not get disbalanced with it. Be sad, be in grief, but as Jay said, that lamentation is very different, suffering is very different because of that sadness. And that is the step-by-step process that the rest 17 chapters take us through.
Yes, quite beautiful. Yes.
Very amazing shloka when Bhagavan, they say Bhagavan Uvacha. Here in this shloka, we can see a friend, a wisest friend. When we go to a friend in a very timidly, when we ask things, and they know our mental state, and my friend replies in a very very funny way, or not funny way, or in a very, what do you say, he will not He will not make you, go lower, because he understands your grieving inside, but also pulls a little joke, where he says, whether whether he says, अशोच्याहन् नन्वशोचसत्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषते. He says prajnavadamshch with all substance and with all thinking. You're putting this argument, wise argument, by when you speak, it looks like that, but actually the real panditas are actually never grieve, never lament. So he's actually taking the burden of Arjuna, but so much burden is on Arjuna's head, and he's just easing his this thing. So he's awakening the wise Arjuna, who is hidden inside the Arjuna, um, who is actually lamenting. Amazing, amazing.
Yes, it is quite an amazing verse that way is. Yes. Anybody else would like to offer their thoughts? Okay. Um, Before we move ahead, just a quick reset. Um, Everybody joining for the first time and joining right now, we are in the Healing and Meditation Club, and this is our Gita from the beginning room. Um, Basically, we started this just to get a broad overall understanding, verse by verse, of the Bhagavad Gita, and we are doing verses 10 to 12 of chapter 2. And this is a weekly room we are doing apart from our daily rooms, which is the Mahamrityunjay Jap room, which is happening at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day, Indian Standard Time. And yes, so if you're not following the club, please do follow by going to the greenhouse at the top, and you'll come to know about our future rooms when we schedule it, and you can put up your reminders on that. So I'll ask Ganpati to do the next verse. Yes,
May I
Kanyaj.
chant? So this was verse 10, right? But
This was 11.
11? Okay. And
Yeah,
10 and 11, okay.
yeah.
So is Manujavaji and Ganpati ji, is can someone explain what the word samkhya means?
Sankhya.
I, I may be saying it incorrectly, actually.
Sankhya Yoga,
Sankhya
right?
means number.
Yeah.
No, not Sankhya.
No.
Samkhya.
Samakhya.
Samakhya. Yeah.
Okay. Where did you read that? Any other previous words?
No, I was just reading explanation on this verse, and I believe chapter 2 is called the chapter that explains Samakhya Yoga.
That's Sankhya Yoga.
That's
Yeah,
Sankhya
it's
Yoga.
Sankhya Yoga.
Samkhya
Sankhya.
Yoga.
Samkhya.
No, it's SAM. Samkhya Yoga. Yoga.
Okay, right. You're reading the English script of the Sanskrit translation. So
Yes.
yeah, it's in many ways, yeah, you can say it is Samkhya Yoga. Yeah.
And what does that word mean?
You want to say, Manojavaji?
Sankhya is one of the philosophies which actually, lot of math. It actually speaks
No, not
about math.
Sankhya. Samkhya. So,
Correct.
okay,
In
okay,
deep
okay.
down, it uses mathematics to understand the universe. Okay, and
Okay.
Bhagwan here explains in everything, and you will, when you read it, you will understand what actually it means. Further
Okay.
shlokas, it will reveal
Okay.
itself. Yeah,
Okay.
Sankhya is all. There are a lot of it also speaks about Nyaya Shastra, Sankhya's. It speaks about lot of things. It's not just, it's just school of, it's a university itself. It has many branches. So when he says things, you will know what actually Sankhya means.
Mm-hmm.
If I say things, you will not enjoy. Mm, let's hear from
Okay.
Krishna's mouth.
Okay. So essentially, um, is he saying in in verse um, 10, from what I understand, and 11, is that you really can't escape your duty, right? You do not wish. We try to. With Arjuna, he was trying to do it with Tark, and all of it, as he's speaking himself, it's, being dissolved. Uh, and essentially, at the end of uh, verse 9, I think, when Arjuna just kind of gives up and kind of says to Lord Krishna, you tell me what to do. So, I mean, he's having a dilemma within himself about his duty and all the bondage that he has with the sansar, and he's seeing it in front of his eyes. Would that be an appropriate thing to say at this, from what I got from these two verses, that, he was trying to kind of logically give arguments about why he should not bear arms against these other people. Yet he knew that they were wrong. That he himself had said it before. In the story, in the happenings of the Mahabharata, within the Mahabharata, we see that he realizes they're unrighteous people. Yet when he is supposed to be the Kshatriya, and he is on a battlefield, so that is his only duty, is to be that warrior. That is the one duty he is giving up. He's supposed to uphold and bear arm against people who are unrighteous so that he can set it right, knowing that these people are unrighteous. And this is why we got to this battlefield. And now he's using logic to put down his weapon, because he's allowing other things to cloud the path of his duty. And it seems what Lord Krishna is trying to say is, it doesn't matter what you think and what arguments you use or what rationalization you use for yourself. Your job, or you're destined to you're supposed to be doing your duty. That's why you've been put on this earth at this moment. And you cannot, you know, the unenlightened will only move away from doing their duty. And at this point, I mean, I find it also very nice that Arjuna, after he's done all his lamentation at this point, up to 9, and said his arguments, he gives up and asks um, Lord Krishna to say, and tells him, please tell me what to do. So what is the action? What is my duty? What should I be doing? Um, it seems like a lot of what I understand is, you cannot shy away from your duty, or you ought not to shy away from your duty. The thing to learn is, no matter what situation you're put in, what's paramount is knowing what your duty is. And despite what is surrounding you, what is creeping into your emotional mind, you have to be able to do your duty. And that is what is the job of a righteous person, or an enlightened person would know that and be able to do it without lamenting, without being caught up with anything else. Um, so, yes, I will stop saying anything there.
Yes, you rightly said. It is about the consciousness and about the matter and about the living being. It is all about that, this yoga.
Can I add something?
Yes. Uh, who is that?
This is Kanupriya.
Oh, yeah, okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, just to add to what Sukanya ji was just saying, so you rightly pointed out that he's talking about duty, but he's, this chapter, and as we move into chapter 3 and especially 4, what he is heading towards in an explanation to understand what is duty. Because Arjun's biggest conflict here in this moment is there's one duty that he's a warrior, he's a trained warrior to fight the battlefield. The second duty is to respect the elders. And Bhishma Pitama is like a father to him, like a teacher to him. So, he's someone he looks at as a guru. So there's one duty there. And then there's duty of fighting in that moment. So his biggest conflict is what is duty. So Krishna then goes on to explain that how do you calculate duty at various points of your life. And the biggest measure to that is remember that and then this would further come into the coming verses where he says that at the end it's just me. So he's going to further explain that is between the soul, the Atman, and the universal soul. So at any point when we are confused about duty or there's conflict like Arjun is of interest, the best way to understand is that the duty should be focused on doing what is universally correct. And in this moment, it was universally correct for Arjun to be fighting for dharma or what is righteous. So that is the biggest duty over everything else. I hope this gives a little more clarity.
Jay, can I say something?
Yes, please.
See, right, see, we have to remember, and thank you, Sukanya ji, that you brought this Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya, when I said mathematics, you said logic. Yes, mathematics is logic. Without logic, there's no mathematics. And when somebody asks a logical question, the answer we have to convince or tell in such a way that your logic is a little defective. This is the logic you should apply and see things clearly, and that is what is happening here. When Arjuna is not wrong when he says, not wrong in the sense, by looking at it, it looks like yes, whatever Arjuna is going through and whatever he's saying is correct. But when Bhagavan says, when Lord, when Almighty speaks, that's it. He said, yeah, this is a better logic. So this is how he's destroying um, the whatever Arjuna thinks is correct is destroying. Lord is destroying by his words. So I think that's why they have called it Sankhya Yoga.
The other thing that I was also thinking about is how Arjuna also seems, I could be wrong in this, but seems to realize that as he says the things he does as arguments, that they're falling, on either side of his argument. They're just kind of dissolving down. And yet he's not able to give up that despondent feeling that, um, the emotion that has really taken hold of his mind, his consciousness, and it's seems to be standing in the way of what he needs to be doing at this time as a Kshatriya, and fighting the battle of against adharma. And yet, and it's not until he completely gives up and he just kind of drops everything and he drops down that Lord Shri Krishna says what he does. So it's, to me, it's as if like here, yes, it is a conversation between two friends, and it is a conversation between the divine and the devotee, where he has totally surrendered at this point. Like, I give up. Tell me what to do. So it's how I have heard growing up, in this yoga. Yes, there's the bhakti marg, bhakti yoga. You just dedicate yourself to the bhakti of the Lord. But even to do that and achieve what you want to achieve, that severance from bondage and becoming one, you still have to give up everything. So it seems like to the on the path of recognizing yourself and becoming one with the divine, at some point you have to give up everything, just like Arjuna did. And that's when Sri Krishna spoke. And that's when he was, beginning, that is when he's beginning to tell us what it is that we ought to be doing, to get to achieve the same oneness with the Almighty. And what I love about this is it's in chapter 2 by verse 10 and 11. He sort of tells us, he doesn't make us wait all the way till chapter 18. So anyway, on that, I'm going to rest my words.
Yes. I think, yes, we can move to the next verse now. Ganpati.
न त्वेवाहं चातुर्नासं न त्वं नेमे जनादीपः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
So the 12th verse, Shri Krishna is talking about, certainly there was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, and certainly never shall we cease to exist hereafter in the future. Now this is a very important verse, and we're sort of now, shifting away from the narrative. This is now going beyond tarka. So this is beyond the human logic which we can imagine. This is beyond human understanding, and this can only come from a person or a source which is beyond these materialistic human things. And the first very important aspect which is spoken about over here by Shri Krishna is that of birth and rebirth. So this is the verse where for the first time probably Shri Krishna introduces Arjuna and all of us basically to the concept of many lives. Birth, death, and then again rebirth. So it's basically a cycle of existence to which everything, practically all living and non-living things, have to adhere to and stick to. Because this is not just limited only to humans or the living creatures. If you really pay attention, even planet Earth itself is in a cyclical mode. It is taking birth, it is living for a certain time, it is dying and then coming back again. And then you can see that happening on a regular basis. Even when volcanoes erupt, they spew out this hot lava, which basically becomes the next upper layer of rock, and that's how layers and layers upon of rock keep forming like that. If you study geology, you will come to know there's layers of rock reaching till the innermost core of the earth, which basically contains hot lava. and then you have igneous, and then sedimentary, and then metamorphosis rock. And so it's just basically all of it, all existence, everything is in a constant state of birth, living, and then death. Even stars. The problem is that our lives are so short that practically when we see a star dying right now, it has actually died many, many million years of back. We're just seeing the after effects, the after lights of that death happening when we see that a blast of the star happening. So basically a supernova which happens. And so when you really look at it, entire existence is in this constant state of birth and rebirth. And in fact, scientists have also claimed that you basically change all of your cells in your body within a span of 7 years. So within 7 years, you've practically changed everything inside your body. Most of your cells have already changed. So you're almost like a new being, at least physically or materially, if we could call that. And that really drives into the next very important aspect of this verse, which is not directly mentioned, but it is being indirectly hinted towards that. And that concept is of individuality. Now, here the concept of individuality applies to the soul, which Shri Krishna talked about basically. So even though there can be many lives, yet the individuality of the soul remains intact amongst all of this. So the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna himself, clearly he is saying that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled in Dharamkshetra, Kurukshetra, they are all eternally individual beings, because he has stated that, that they will never cease to exist either in the past or in the future. So over here, the Supreme Godhead, who is Shri Krishna, he is the supreme individual person, the Supreme Purusha, you could say, and Arjuna is the Lord's eternal associate. And all the kings who are assembled there are individual, eternal beings. So it is not that they did not exist as individuals in the past, and neither is it that they will not remain eternal persons. So their individuality existed in the past, and it will continue to remain in the future without interruption. So when this fact is presented to Arjuna or even to us, then there is no cause for lamentation for anyone. So generally generally we have the theory that after liberation, the individual soul, which is separated by this materialistic cover of Maya or illusion, will go and merge into the impersonal supreme being, or the Brahman, as you could say, the universe, and then lose its individual existence. So over here, Shri Krishna is basically not adhering to that logic. He is denouncing it, and he's saying that this does not hold true. So when we talk about this theory, we don't only think of the individuality in the conditioned state which is supported here. Shri Krishna is clearly saying that in the future also, this individuality of the Lord and everyone else will still continue. And this is confirmed in the Vedas and even one of the Kathopanishads, that they will continue to remain there eternally. In one of the Kathopanishad, it is said that the Supreme Personality, which is the Godhead, he is the maintainer of practically uncountable, innumerable living entities, everything possibly. And in terms of their different situations, according to individual work and their reaction to that work. So he's in control of all of that. And he is alive in the heart of almost all living beings. And basically, it is only people who transcend these materialistic uh, coverings, these materialistic uh, shells which we are given, who can really see within and without that this Supreme Lord, he can actually attain to perfect and eternal peace. When he knows that this is the truth, these people who go beyond this, they can actually attain this spot of eternal peace. And so basically, Shri Krishna, if you look at him, he's maintaining this spiritual individuality all along in the Bhagavad Gita. He is going to refer to this many a times, and even in this verse, he's maintaining it throughout, from the beginning till the end. So, if you accept him as an ordinary conditioned soul, someone who is an ordinary being in individual consciousness, then this entire Bhagavad Gita will not hold any value as any authoritative scripture, because then it completely falls on the logic of Tarka or even Vitarka, because now Krishna is moving beyond Tarka and taking Arjuna into the Vitarka area, where it's going beyond human senses, human intellect, human ego, human ways of trivializing and attaching everything to logic and argument. But Arjuna has already gone past that, and that's why Sri Krishna is now introducing this very deep and very important topic of birth and rebirth, and basically talking about how the soul remains individual. He is not even excluding himself. He is saying that even I, across the ages, across the lifetimes, I've maintained that same individuality of my soul. And over here, I'd like to welcome any thoughts from all of you. Anybody would like to share?
Can I go, Jay?
Yes, Manoj.
Yeah. Uh, in see, Almighty is setting a stage here. He's setting a pretext for this thing in this yoga. He's not actually talking about any bhakti. He's not talking about anything. He's answering to the logic. He's answering to the logic. He says, okay, you talk wisely, but you are lamenting. And by saying that, he's saying, okay, he made Arjuna to think and listen. And he says, okay, we all existed all the time, we will exist all the time. So now, even I think he's making Arjuna make more give more attention to what he's going to speak. He's here uh, mm, certain certain philosophies might not agree about rebirths and all that, but in Sanatana Dharma and in this thing, it is we know this is not illogical to a Sanatani, that we born, we come again, just the way we change our clothes, soul changes clothes, just the way we are like um, from the childhood we grew older, our body changed, as you said, the cells every 7 years, cells totally changed. Like that, we grew from a small baby without teeth. We had with 32 teeth, and again we lost. And like that, I think this shloka is a pretext for even more profound answers from Almighty.
Yes, quite true actually. It's going to get quite deeper, and basically it's, you know, he's going in a very linear fashion. Shri Krishna he knows the human intellect cannot really grasp too much, so he has to go very linearly, talk in very humanly terms which people can understand in the beginning at least, but later on he is going to really take us through the in-depth and introduce us to topics which, at least at that time, they had lost the significance, or had been underground for quite a long time, and he's going to bring it back because he knows this is something which is going to be required, probably because we've moved from the Treta Yuga and into the Dwapar Yuga, and consequently he knows the Kali Yuga is about to come as well. So these are the tools which are going to help people really navigate this really endless sea called life, which has innumerable number of storms and a lot of hurdles and hardships. But the basic fact being that even though it's an endless sea with many storms on the way, that feeling of being unreasonably happy and being eternally content in oneself, that should never go away. And that is where he is trying to attack the concept of lamentation. He is trying to remove that lamentation, because life is much beyond this lamentation and grief. Life is supposed to be enjoyed. It's an opportunity to really feel all these different emotions and feelings, and really celebrate this joyful thing called life, and this joyous moment which we have in our hands. And why do I say moment? Is because life is all in moments. We think we have many years, but not all of us get to enjoy it for as long, and that's why each and every moment counts. It's the life is basically in those individual moments, and it's only those moments which then later on add up and become what is life for us, and eventually what we can term as our lifespan. So that is, an important lesson which Shri Krishna is trying to teach us. Like, we always have some form of lamentation or grief or suffering, you should say, in a better word, because having pain is not a bad thing, because it's a logical byproduct of creation. If I were to have no pain in my body, then if I get a physical injury, I would never come to know that there's an injury. And if I don't come to know if that injury is probably a little too skin deep, there will be a huge loss of blood. And if I don't stem that loss of blood, your life is trickling away. You're soon going to faint, and then slowly that trickle will completely drain you out. And that's the end of it. So pain is very important. Pain is needed. But I am talking about physical pain at a very skin or material level. Or you could even say a pain in your joints or in the bones. But that is again only at the physical level. But once you start taking that pain, take it into your mind and start thinking about it the entire day, then you're entering the territory of suffering. And suffering is far worse than any form of pain. I think there is practically no pain which can match up to suffering. And the problem is, all of us can treat pains. Pain is very easy to treat. We have medical professionals who can actually treat all forms of pain and can pinpoint how to treat it, where it is happening. But what do you do for suffering? Because the problem is, suffering, you never know when it will manifest. Even the most trained psychiatrists and psychologists have to really, dig deep and really try and pinpoint, but it's not that all of the times they can be successful. You can maybe have somebody who basically drops their suffering, but you don't know how much percentage they've dropped, and you don't know whether they will revert back to that suffering phase again, because human life is by default, it just heads into suffering. Whenever we try to intellectualize or apply too much of logic to it, it's always going to have too much of suffering into it. And that's why, if you really see, when we are not in a good state, at least physically, you tend to sleep more, especially when the body is sick or not in proper working condition. You tend to sleep for longer hours because the body is trying to stay away from the mentality about all this, the mentality of existence. You're basically trying to avoid existence for as long as possible. And so sleep tends to be the first thing which you turn towards when this sort of a grief situation comes. But the problem is that even with that amount of sleep, the mind is still working. And so hence, when you wake up, you are still very tired and completely flushed out. Because even during that sleep, your mind has been working at full steam and basically it's not rested at all. You would rather have 4 to 5 hours of deep, dreamless sleep with no thoughts, and you would still wake up fresh and ready to go the next day. But instead, we have all these thoughts circling in our mind, and usually we don't even empty out our minds before we go to sleep. And that sort of translates into this active state even in sleeping stage, which is bad because it's bad for our suffering phase. It really amplifies it even further and further, and really drills deep down into our subconscious. And that's where we need to stop this stem of flow and really take pain as just pain itself. See the usefulness of this concept of pain which has been given to us. Really feel it and then let it go, and not really let it turn into grief or lamentation or sadness, because that's not what the body is built for. And if you cannot really visualize this, try, really bringing up your emotions, any form of emotions, and try holding on to that emotion for, let's say, 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or even for 1 minute. If you laugh uncontrollably, you will have breathing problems because you will choke. Because when you're laughing really, really hard, you stop breathing actually for a few seconds. But just expand that to 1 minute or 2 minutes, and you will choke instantly. The same goes for when you're crying or when you're angry. That's the same thing which happens. So basically, your body is really not built for that kind of emotions. If you're going to stay in that state of absolute pure emotion for even, let's say, more than 15 to 20 minutes, your body will have a systematic breakdown and you might go into a coma if you really try to do that. Which is why you cannot have extreme of emotions, and that's why existence has built this into all of us. we cannot really go off balance, and that is why we need to have this deep sense of contentedness, satisfaction, and being unreasonably happy in ourselves. Because if we don't find that center of happiness inside us, which is basically bliss, because even happiness is an emotion, it comes and goes away like the seasons. Something good happens for you and you feel happy, and then it just goes away. Like the last time you laughed at a joke, didn't you return back to your normal state? Your face came back to its original state. You cannot be really laughing so hard at a joke for too long. You have to return back to the normal state. And that's why bliss is this certain state of just nothingness. You are just there. You're just being. Your inner lake of peace and serenity does not have any ripples on its surface. And then you just enjoy in that blissful state, and you're peaceful in that manner. So, Sukanya ji, you want to add something, or we can move towards the closure probably?
No, I was just listening and trying to process all the words that I was taking in. And I mean, it brought up multiple things in terms of my work related, in my training and what we say in that and why we have, as you said, breakdowns. As humans, we often go through this journey of life, and when things happen, we tend to at times blame that thing that happened for our state of being. And the thing that possibly an event or whatever, that's, that takes place, well, it's just an event that took place. I may look at it and see that it's devastating because it touched something in my life in a way that I didn't wish for it to happen. Somebody else may look at it and interpret it differently because maybe it doesn't touch their life so gravely. But we tend to then, if I, were to be sad and grieving, we tend to blame that thing for our state of being, which is sort of giving our powers away of being an entity with all the aspects of, what consciousness can have. You can think, you can interpret, you can rationalize, you can have emotions, you can feel, all of that. We tend to give away and blame a situation. Yet all of that interpretation really happens within us. The event is just an event. The emotions that come up are our own. We then have, if it came in me, in my thought process, the way I tend to take an event and dissect it and look at it and then say, this affected me in a way I didn't wish for it to do. I wish it would have been this way. I wish it would have been that way. Then I have the emotions, and yet I blame the event for causing my state of being. And the devastation in me would come if I were to hold on to that emotion then for so long that I tend to identify with it, right? And I'm talking about, states of depression and all of that. that a psychiatrist would treat, and I'm a psychiatrist. So um, it's we seem to go through life thinking we have control over things. We like to have control over things, and in doing so, almost I feel is when we create the issues for ourselves. Because in having that control, then we think that this event, which let's say it's supposed to be like, let's say I'm supposed to get an exam or whatever, the results of an exam. I'm supposed to take the exam, and then I hope that I do this way as the result. But the result comes out negative. It comes out really poor. And then what do? I'm first taking that result and allowing it to dictate what I am, who I am, and then feeling out of control because this exam and the results of this exam has made me identify myself as somebody unaccomplished or less than or a failure. And then with that word failure, I have emotions that come up. And then that emotion, if I continue to dwell in it, I start identifying with it. So it seems like events will happen, yet what we take in and how we interpret it and how we see it is where the work seems to lie. If we continue to take emotions that, I'm talking about the big emotions, usually the ones that are negative, I would say, and even sometimes positive ones. You see someone, so I'll talk in terms of my field. You see someone very happy, constantly, extremely happy. We have a name for that, mania, the state of mania. That's not good either. So it's not just negative emotions, even the positive ones, or what we tend to prescribe a positive connotation to, can also be detrimental in a prolonged state. Just like Jay was saying, that, if you laugh and you try to laugh, I mean, it happens. I mean, remember those big laughs that you have uncontrollable? Your belly starts to hurt and you can't take a breath, but you can't stop laughing. I mean, could you sustain that for a long period of time? No, it would harm this body if you continue to try and do it. So we feel that, we want to have control over things. We are unhappy when we feel like we have lost control. Yet we allow the emotions that come up from that loss of control to then take over and further lose control over this life. And yet the events keep happening, right? So it's what Lord Krishna was saying in the previous verse, where, an enlightened being would have thoughts, would have feelings, yet would also know the balance of where all of that starts and finishes, and continue to then do their duty. It's in that balance of being, right? You're not supposed to go through life, as Jay was also saying, being unhappy, right? Yet we prescribe a lot of this happy or unhappiness to the results, if they don't come out the way we want, right? If I were to be achieving this, then I would be happy. Then I achieve that. And then, well, does the happiness stay with me? No. Then I'm looking to something else that I want to achieve or have or gain or control. And then I think I will be happy. And then I gain that. Am I happy? No, because I'm now looking for the other thing, the next thing, the next thing. Yet, from what I understand, is we are given these births, like he said. The Lord said that there was never a time that I did not exist, meaning anyone did not exist, you did not exist, the princess did not exist, and all of that. There won't be a time that they won't. So why is it that we keep having all of these births and rebirths? And what is it that we're trying to achieve? And like, if it's enlightenment, then is it that balance? Is it that understanding? Yes, be a full conscious being, feel the feeling, have the clarity of duty, and then keep moving towards that supreme being without getting bogged down and identifying with the feelings or the failures or anything that has happened or happens to us, as we say. It happens to us, and that's why my life is so bad. But my life is only bad because I think my life is bad. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but the other thing I was thinking of when I was reading this is the Mahamrityunjay mantra and the lines that say, we pray to Lord Shiva so that he may deliver us or sever our bondage with this sansar, this constant bondage of birth, rebirth. So I think there's more things to come for us to learn in the coming verses and chapters. Anyway, that's where I want to stop. Thank you.
I think that's a good note to end the session if we have no further thoughts. Okay. So I'll just close with invocation. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Aum Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. That's it.
Hari Om. That's it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hari Om.
So we shall meet next week. Please do follow the club so that you can come to know whenever we schedule the rooms. So the Gita room will be next week on Wednesday, and obviously we will meet tomorrow, that is 8 a.m. Indian Standard Time, for our Mahamrityunjay Jap room. So we'll all meet there again, and okay, we'll close the room on a count of 3, and at the end join me in saying Jai Shri Krishna. 3, 2, 1.
Jai
Jai
Shri
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 Krishna.
Krishna.
Krishna.